radio stations across the land, iHeartRadio, Newsmax TV. It's the Joe Pag Show. Glad to have you here, and really super special privileged to have with us Dr. Ben Carson. He, of course, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development with the Trump administration. Doctor, how are you?
I'm doing very, very fine. Good to be with you again.
Yeah, it's really great to have you back on. I want to take you back to a couple of conversations we had, and the first one, I think you were pretty set that you weren't going to run for president. The second one, you said, I'm definitely going to run for president, but don't tell anybody yet. And I think the third time you were on the campaign trail. How have you changed as a person, if you have at all, by realizing what it takes to make a run like that, and what the inundation from the left media really is all about?
Well, it was quite an experience, no question about that. And the good thing is I got to meet so many incredible people across this country, and that's why I was confident what the election results were going to be. Thomas Jefferson said that the people of America will not allow us to change into something else, and we were on the verge of changing into something else. So, it gave me a great deal of confidence in our people, and to trust the tremendous goodwill of people. I still can't get over it. Even when I pulled out, I had to beg people to stop sending money.
Right. No, I know you did, because people, on all the stations and all the markets where I am, kept on saying, we still want Ben Carson. Is there a chance? And the fact was, you saw the writing on the wall and figured, I'm gonna back out. Let's get a good candidate. And did you know at that point when you were backing out that you would make yourself available to take part in the administration, or were you pretty settled that you weren't gonna?
I was actually pretty settled that I wasn't going to, but I did back out when I did, because I saw what was happening.
Yeah.
We were heading for a brokered convention, and that was not going to be good for us.
And you getting out and then getting back in, I think the assumption was, and again, it's Dr. Ben Carson, Secretary of the Housing and Urban Development with the Trump administration, people assumed that if you were going to play a role, it was either going to be vice president or it was going to be Health and Human Services. So when you decide on HUD, how do we get from possibly the number two in line to, again, you being a doctor, we made the silly assumption that it would be Health and Human Services. How did HUD jump out at you as the right opportunity?
Because, my entire professional career was spent trying to give children a second chance and trying to give them a quality of life. And I recognize that there's a significant segment of our population who don't have that quality of life, and that we need to change the focus of a place like HUD from just putting a roof over someone's head to really developing our people, once again inspiring people to have that can-do attitude that made America into a great place. And if we don't do that, and if we don't start developing our people, we lose in a sheer numbers game, because China and India both have 4 times as many people as we do.
Right.
And we have to compete with them into the future. So we need to start thinking about this now and changing the way we do things now if we're going to have a chance.
It's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Dr. Ben Carson. What is that department supposed to do, Doctor? I know that it sounds like a very generic, question or general question. It's really not. I don't think that people listening, and I myself, I don't think we understand what the specific role is of this department. What do you see it as?
Specifically, it was designed because it was recognized that there were a number of people in our country who were disadvantaged, but who were still very much in need of housing and need of security. So that is what it was designed for. We're kind of expanding that mission to, developing communities and neighborhoods in a way that they can be nurturing places that can really help to develop the full potential of all of our people. And, that means working across silos and, basically having a holistic approach to the way that we do things. Education, jobs, health care, transportation, all of those things are involved in creating the right kind of atmosphere. Just think of health care for a moment. So many low-income people use the emergency room.
Yeah.
That costs 5 times more than a clinic. So if we integrate clinics into their living area, look how much money that saves, not to mention, the follow-up, which is not done by the emergency rooms. So you got a whole lot more cases of stage 4 diabetes and other diseases that you wouldn't have if you had regular follow-up.
It's Dr. Ben Carson, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. I think those are great comparisons, but I've got to ask you this. A lot of people watching, and I'll just say it for myself, I believe that we sometimes disincentivize people from what you and I talk about all the time as the American dream when we say, here's the housing, here's Section 8, here's the housing, here are the projects, which, of course, that's not a winning combination to send somebody to the projects. But is there a charge for housing and urban development and for you as the leader of that department to teach people, yes, we want to help you get yourself into a position to get a house, but we also don't want to just give you a handout and stop you from trying? Is there a way to incentivize people while still helping them when they're in need?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that we're going to do is put much more emphasis on Section 3,
okay,
which requires HUD builders to use low-income residents as employees during the construction of these various developments and the redevelopment of places. It's largely ignored right now, and we're going to change that by emphasizing it in a different way and incentivizing people to use it. But just think about it. Most major construction and reconstruction projects are known about well more than a year in advance.
Right.
So if you know that already, why not prepare the people, begin to train the people ahead of time so that when you're ready to do it, you have the workforce that's necessary. And if you give them those skills, you're giving them something that they carry with them for the rest of their lives. Again, something that will free them up and allow them to, take their wings and fly away. That's what we're trying to do. It's not how many people we can get into public housing, it's how many people we can get out of it. Yeah. And also another ideal we've had is the house savings accounts. Take a small amount of money each month and put it into an account that is associated with that unit. And the routine maintenance comes out of that account. So if the screens always have holes poked in and the windows are always broken and light bulbs, it comes out of that account. But if not, the money just continues to accumulate month over month, year over year. They have the ability to see how much money it is, which kind of incentivizes them. And if they move out of public housing in 5 to 10 years, they get the money for a down payment.
And the truth is, many people that you're running into, many people that I talk to, don't think that the American dream is available to them or that they'll ever be able to buy a house. If we get people to the point to where they can actually make that purchase, no matter how small or how big that first purchase is, buying a house in America sort of, puts your feet in cement that you have achieve the American dream. That's what it's all about. And a lot of people, I think, still believe they have to get it from the government. They have to be handed something from somebody else. And that disincentive has been happening from the far left and Democrats who thought up projects, to be honest with you, for a long time. I want to see people like you want to see people achieve what we know they could achieve. So hiring people from the surrounding area, from that community, also these savings accounts sounds great, but you're going to be attacked by the left a lot because that means less government spending, less government intervention, and you and I both know that they want to control the masses. How do you balance that and get people in these urban areas that are voting by and large Democrat to see that it's really not a political issue, it's about the American dream and it's about success in their own lives?
Well, actually, I've been quite pleasantly surprised as I've talked to a lot of people on the other side about some of these programs, and they, for the most part, actually like them. When they actually sit down and listen and we engage in a dialogue and they begin to see what the real effects are. Now, there are some others perhaps behind the scenes who are doing a lot of manipulating of people.
Yeah, agreed.
Who do want to maintain some dependency because that gives them control. But your average Democrat isn't like that, and many of them simply haven't really thought through this thing. But when they start listening and recognizing what the end effect is, people of goodwill want to see others succeed, and they understand that this is a mechanism for making that happen. It's
Dr. Ben Carson, HUD Secretary, Housing and Urban Development Secretary of the Trump administration. I know you've got to go here in a second. I want to ask you a quick question, though, about Michigan. I've got 15 of my 93 stations are in Michigan. I spent a lot of time there as a television news anchor, spent a lot of time in Detroit. Detroit is the poster city for how not to run a city. Detroit is the poster city for urban blight and for people throwing their hands up and saying we just can't succeed. I mean, there are beautiful old homes there that are available for a couple of $1,000s, and right now they're probably being inhabited by crack dealers. How do you go into a place like Detroit, once Grand City, USA, and get the residents to understand that A, you really can trust the leaders because the leaders there have stunk for 60 years, Doctor. And B, I'm here to help. I'm not here to take more advantage of you.
Well, interestingly enough, Detroit has had sputtering stops and starts for the last 40 or 50 years.
Right.
But now they actually are making some very substantial progress, primarily by using public-private partnerships. By creating these win-win situations where you can take the federal dollars and leverage them. In Detroit, at an average of 8 to 1. And as a result of that, some of the most blighted areas, I visited one of the projects that was horrendous when I was growing up.
Yeah.
It's now beautiful with a long waiting list to get in there. But the government contribution was only about 1/8 of what had to be done. But you have to be able to create the right kinds of incentives. And you have to create win-win situations. That's going to really be the key because the government doesn't have enough money to do all the things that need to be done. But there's infinitely more money in the private sector, but you can't just ask them to give it to you. You have to create the right circumstances under which they see an advantage for themselves as well.
We supported you when you ran. I love what you're doing so far as HUD Secretary. Continued success. And do me a favor, if you're in the San Antonio area, let's say hello and let's do this face-to-face next time.
I'll look forward to it. It'll be great.
Doctor, thank you so much. It's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Dr. Ben Carson. We're back.